Hi, and welcome to Section 3, Working with Spring Beans. In this section, we're going to learn how to work with Spring Beans in detail. This is going to consist of a little recap and then some more detailed information about Spring Beans that we haven't heard of in the previous section. Then we're also going to learn different ways of creating Spring Beans. So far, we know the component annotation. There's going to be another annotation that is introduced in this section. Then we're going to learn what Spring Bean scopes are and how they influence the exposure of beans. We're going to learn what the Spring Bean lifecycle is and what Spring Bean lifecycle callbacks are and what these callbacks can be used for. And last, we're going to learn how to work with Spring property files, which is a very, very convenient way of basically accessing data from files within your Spring application. Introduction to Spring Beans. In this section, we're going to learn what Spring Beans are in general. This is also going to be a little bit of recapitulation from the previous section in order to freshen up your memory about the new information to come. We're also going to recap about the component annotation real quick, which is one way of creating beans in Spring. And then we're going to learn of a new annotation, which is the bean annotation, which can also be used to create Spring Beans, as the name indicates. So without further ado, let's recap about Spring Beans real quick. Spring Beans are basically custom objects which are instantiated and managed by the Spring IOC container using annotations. What's important to know is that before a bean can be created, it requires definition, which is basically a unique recipe that you as a developer provide for creating the actual instances of that bean object later on. Concerning the component annotation, the annotation is used in Spring to mark any classes that you desire as Spring managed components, which are beans basically. It's important to know that both the component and bean annotation create beans, but they function in a quite different way. A bean, when using the component annotation, is declared on class level. And by default, the bean name is then the same as the class name of the class that is annotated via component annotation. Which brings us to the next annotation for creating beans, which is the bean annotation. And this annotation can also be used to create beans, but it can only be used in classes which are annotated with the Spring configuration annotation. The major difference is that the bean annotation is declared on a method level, which means that the actual return value of the method is going to be the Spring managed bean. And by default, the bean name is then the same as the method name. So the main difference between bean and component is that component beans are annotated on class level, whereas bean annotations are declared on method level.